intrinsic features of the experience itself, the subjective, qualitative experience, which guarantees that it actually represents the real world. And there aren't any such features. There couldn't be. This is why skepticism continues to have its grip. But if you shift the question and you ask a naturalistic question, how do little kids learn anyhow? And how do we learn to cope with the world? Then it seems to me there's an answer to that. So if you want to know how is knowledge possible, take cases where knowledge is actual and see how they work. See how the child actually acquires the knowledge. Other questions? Yeah.
I've got a bit of a problem with that 5.
Yeah.
You're doing, I'm sure not casually, the argument that stars, you're seeing a star that
yeah, right.
What are you seeing?
Yes, you are seeing a star. And the point is there's a feature of the star which is illusory, which is not satisfied, namely that the star exists here and now. And it's absolutely fascinating. You can see stars and know that you're seeing stars where you know that the stars ceased to exist millions of years ago. Yet you are still seeing it. Well, how is that possible? Well, we know light goes pretty fast, but it's still finite, 186,000 miles a second. So it takes a while for the light to get here. And the light will keep coming for a long time after the star has ceased to exist. And so, I mean, my story here is hardly original. It's in any standard account. And what I'm saying is that seems to me the correct way to describe it. You can see events. You literally see the star. You literally see the star, even though it doesn't exist here and now. It did exist in the past, and what you are seeing is the star as it, well, you don't get a very good view of it, but you see the star as it existed when it was in existence, and it's what you're, and the reason that's possible is that the light continues to come after the star ceases to emit the light.
Substantially the same answer as you gave to the previous question.
What?
Substantially the same answer as you gave to the previous question.
I mean, if you like. My approach is naturalistic. You see, I have two problems with philosophers. One is, it seems to me, there's a certain set of traditional philosophical questions, and I'm sort of unmusical where those questions are concerned, because the idea is, if you're going to justify this, first you've got to answer the skeptic. And that means you've got to answer the skeptics on the skeptic's terms. And of course, that can't be done, because the whole point of the skeptic's term, the skepticism always has exactly the same form, as I said a few moments ago. It's always of the form, you could have this evidence and still be radically wrong, and indeed you could have any evidence and still be radically wrong. Now, why does that have a grip on us? Because the notion of what it is to have evidence is defined mentalistically. That is, it's defined in terms of the character of our experiences, and we're supposed to be able to identify some feature of the experience, some force and vivacity, to use the Humean jargon, or some clear and distinct perception, to use the Cartesian jargon, which will mark it out as valid. And of course, there couldn't be any such, because no matter what the character of the experience is, you could have that type of experience and still be radically mistaken. So my approach is naturalistic in the sense that, think of us as what we are. We're biological beasts. We've evolved essentially to deal with hunter-gatherer environments, though fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, the hunter-gatherer environment gave us surplus neurons. We got more neurons than we need to cope with the hunter-gatherer environment, so guess what? We invent philosophy, neurosis, pornography, and all sorts of the other joys of contemporary life. And all of those are the result of the fact that we got more neurons than are necessary. But if the question is, how is intentionality possible at all, or how is knowledge possible at all, if those are meaningful questions, they must be, in a sense, biological questions. They must be, or if you like, psychological development questions. How does the child acquire the ability to cope? How did we acquire the evolutionary ability to make the discriminations necessary for us to survive? Yeah?
From what you said, I gather that he take the visual experience to be non-conceptual in character. Is that right?
I'm not sure. Let me repeat the question. It's a very important question. He asked me, do I take the visual experience to be non-conceptual? I'm not exactly sure what the question asks. I think most of the experiences that humans have are not the kind that my dog Gilbert, he's a wonderful dog, but he sees a moving object, and I don't know how he conceptualizes it. I see a Porsche 911 that's got a defect in the tappets because it's making funny noises. And so I immediately see the environment at the level, I mean, I have this notion of the background ability. I see objects at the level of background skills. So I don't just see colors and shapes. On the contrary, it takes a conscious effort to focus on the color and the shape. But I see cars as moving and moving toward me or moving on the wrong side of the street, as going too fast, as violating the law, all sorts of other things. So the level of intentionality rises to the level of the background abilities, and this is true of action as well. So I don't just, when I'm driving a car, I don't think, now this is the gear shift and you have to push it there and there. No, I drive, and all of that's done as a matter of application of my background skill. Now, to some extent, I think that's correctly describable by saying it's conceptual, that I couldn't perceive these things the way I do if I didn't have certain sorts of conceptual skills. What I'm nervous about is a traditional philosophical idea that says, well, concepts are kind of pure mental phenomena that go through your mind, and that when you know the meaning of a word, you attach it to the concepts in the mind. I think Wittgenstein refuted that view. So if you mean by conceptual what I mean by conceptual, then typically human perceptual experiences have a conceptual component.
But I'm asking because if they are conceptual, then I don't see how the condition of determinacy can be fulfilled, because I take it that if something is brought under concepts, I mean in Kantian jargon, then that's the source of indeterminacy.
Well, let's think about it. You see, if you take the actual concepts that would apply, then it seems to me they have the kind of determinacy we need. So if you don't know anything about written language, then these would just be marks on a blackboard. If you know that there's something about written language, then you would recognize those as two words, as regnant. And if you know German, you would know, and you would see, there's a sense in which you literally see the meaning. You see, yes, the guy wrote that it's raining on the blackboard. And there's an interesting fact about that. If you ask people to report what they heard or report what they read, they almost never give you the exact words, the exact sequence. They give you the semantic content. They perceive at the level of semantic content. So if you know German, you probably all know German, but my students don't, they would see this differently than I do. I see it as a German sentence with a specific meaning. But it's still determinate. I still see it as having as a determinate German sentence with a determinate meaning, even though, of course, the sentence is itself a representation. And the whole point about the indexicality is that it's a consequence of the character of the presentational content, the presentational character of the conditions of satisfaction. That when I see something, I'm directly presented with the object or state of affairs that I perceive. Yeah.
Does in the number of your beliefs contain, or does there exist a pre-sign experience of pre-sign intentionality? I mean, something like the Persian firstness exists in your conception.
I'm lost. You have to remind me what Peirce meant about that. But give me an example. Yeah, I know how to spell his name. I know the guy, but I'm not an expert on his views.
Without any continuous representation, direct feeling.
Yeah.
Is it in your conception?
Well, let me describe my conception, and you tell me how that answers the question. When I talk about continuousness, I have now been speaking here for more than an hour, and in the course of that, I've had a kind of continuous experience of a room full of people and philosophical ideas that I've been trying to present to the people, and that's what I mean by continuousness. Now, that's different from language.